How do you react when things aren't going as well as you'd like with your music? It turns out that there are 3 common responses, but only one of them is helpful. Here's how to recognize the different responses and make sure that you don't get stuck in any of the unhelpful ones. We all struggle with music from time to time, and that's just as true for the really successful musicians as it is for everyone else. The difference, usually, however, lies in our response to those initial struggles. So getting that response right can really help you make faster progress and be much less frustrated. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to do just that. And when you find yourself struggling with things, there are 3 common responses. The first is defensive denial, the second is collapse, and the third one is growth. Now, obviously growth is what we're looking for, but what about the other ones? How do we recognize them, and how can we get to that? So let's look at them all individually. Now, defensive denial is essentially looking at whatever's going on and saying, it's all fine, there's no problem here. And the tricky thing about it is that it usually doesn't feel like you're denying anything. It's not like you're confronting this serious evidence that something is horribly wrong and trying to prove that this is incorrect in some way. Rather, you're skirting the issue. You're trying to kind of justify why you don't even need to think about, is there a problem here? So it's much more about looking for excuses not to engage, to kind of carry on and not see whatever that worrying thing is off out in the corner of your eye, and just find an excuse to say, actually, it's all fine. There's nothing to see here. I don't need to worry about things. I don't need to get engaged. Let's just move along. Whereas the collapse response is much more about giving up in the face of whatever issues you're struggling with. And this might come from an internal place. You might justify it to yourself by saying, oh, I don't need this anyway, or I don't really want it. It's not that important to me. And so you're looking at something that's giving you issues and giving yourself a reason not to go after it because it's not something you need. That's what you tell yourself. And the other way that it can manifest itself is you're looking at external things, what's going on out there, and using that as a reason why you don't need to try. So external conditions are hard. There's something out there that is stopping me from doing this. There's no chance that I'll ever get it. So what is the point in trying? So you've got those 2 ways of looking at it. Either it's an internal thing or an external thing, but overall the result is the same. You decide, I'm just not going to put the effort into this. I'm just going to give up. So why on earth would we fall into one of those 2 responses rather than growth? Because growth, of course, is what we want. Well, the answer is that it can be painful and uncomfortable to do the things that you need to grow. And one of the ways to look at that is growth is in a sense, it's the opposite of both the denial or the collapse responses. So it's the opposite of denial in that the way we grow is by deliberately confronting the situation. We're not trying to pretend things are better than they are. We're not trying to pretend it's going to be easy. We're taking a long, hard look at what the issue is and resolving to do something about it. So it's that deliberate confronting, uncomfortable truths. And growth is also, if you like, the opposite of the collapse mindset, the collapse response, because it's about putting in the effort. It's about being honest up front and saying, yes, this is going to take effort and I'm willing to do it and not give up. And this takes faith because by definition, at this point where you're struggling, you are at a point where you're trying some stuff and you're not getting results. So to say, you know what, I'm going to keep going is a leap of faith in some ways. So you've got to have that. You've got to have that faith in yourself. And again, we talked about one of the issues in collapse being, or you're blaming external circumstances and saying, oh, well, I can't do it because there's this thing out there and it's just not fair or it's just too hard or whatever. And again, growth does not put up with that. It's about saying, well, the circumstances might be tough, but I am going to take responsibility for making this happen, for doing this. So you can see how it's a much more effective response, but it is a tricky one. And the first thing to getting the right response in these things is just to recognize where you are in those 3 responses. Because like I've said, denial is not a straight out denial. It can be really easy to kid yourself that there isn't a problem and everything's fine and you're not making an unhelpful response. Equally, with the collapse one, there's always something you can blame. You can tell yourself, well, I don't need this, it's not important to me. You can tell yourself there's something out there that means there's no point. These things can slip under the radar very quickly if you're not aware of them. So think about those 3 responses. Take the time when you're struggling with things or when things are going on just to check, am I falling into one of those 2 unhelpful responses? Because if you are and you notice it, that's when you can make the shift. The painful shift sometimes, but such an effective shift to that growth response. Now, I definitely recommend checking out my video on music practice tips for difficult days next. And if you'd like the special practice and performance tips that I only share with subscribers, then head on over to playinthezone.com and sign up for the emails. They're free. I've been Morley-Fletcher. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.